Okay, so good morning everyone and welcome to this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar. Today we're going down a different route to what we normally talk about, cows and grass generally, but today we're going to talk about machinery. So Francis Quigley is the machinery specialist in Kildalton, and I've been talking to Francis a bit lately in the last number of weeks, especially in relation to protected urea and how it spreads, and people saying that there's issues with it. So Francis is actually, after discovering, I suppose, in the scenario of trying to check out the whole scenario around spreading fertilizer or spreading protected urea in particular, that there's actually problems with fertilizer spreaders. So he's actually going to go through kind of general maintenance of the spreader, setting it up correctly for whether it be a can or protected urea that you're using, just to give people a feel for it. And I suppose if a lot of people out there are like me, I think that I like most about machinery is when you sit up on it and it starts and it does what it's supposed to do, but there's the maintenance piece of it which I wouldn't be very strong on myself, and Francis is very strong on that aspect of it and trying to make sure the machine is set up correctly to start and that will work properly. And obviously, look, that's an important point as well in relation to actually spreading fertilizer, especially along by drains and dikes and so forth, that along the headlands are being sprayed correctly, that there's not fertilizer flying off into the ditch or flying into a stream, that the machine is set up correctly for that purpose as well. So I'll hand over to Francis. Francis will be able to talk for at great length here on any aspect of fertilizer or fertilizer spreaders that anyone wants to ask a question about as we go along. So I'll hand over to you there, so Francis, and thanks for doing this for me.
Not at all. Thanks, Stuart, for asking me. Look, I have a few spreaders set up here today, just so we can have a look at them now. Look, the three spreaders I actually have set up here today are actually twin disc spreaders. I suppose these are probably the most common machines on the market, you know, or that have been used out on farms. Now, obviously, the wagtail spreader as well would still be very popular, you know, and is still, you know, a highly accurate machine again once it's set up correctly, and I suppose that it's been maintained and looked after correctly, like, you know. We might start, I suppose, you know, one of the challenges that we have with fertilizer spreaders is, like, you know, we jump up and we expect it to spread, you know, our fertilizer, you know, I suppose in lots of cases maybe without even tweaking or looking at it, you know. But the reality is these machines are designed to spread a huge variety of products, and you know, there's a massive range in the actual products that these machines can actually spread, and can spread very accurately, you know, from a prilled, which is a very fine, small, evenly shaped material, right up to some of the very coarse granular material, like, you know. And they will spread it, you know. They have no problem spreading it accurately, you know, once the machine is set up for the particular fertilizer. And I suppose that's the thing people need to understand, is that they do need, certainly initially, they have to make sure that they're setting it up for the fertilizer they're spreading it for. And even if you, like, maybe you were using, you know, maybe weren't used to using a urea product, and you've now moved to urea product, there is a vast difference between our cans and our urea products. One of the things that you'll know yourself even is just by the weight, like the size of the bag. The same size bag, you know, or same weight bag is actually considerably bigger. You know, so that means the actual density of the product is much lighter, you know, so it's actually a lighter product. So when it gets thrown from the machine, it won't have the same energy in it to travel as far. So again, we need to make sure that we give it that extra energy by adjusting the machine to suit the product, you know. And that's, I suppose, with these machines, it's generally about adjusting vanes and things like that. But the first thing, I suppose, that we need to get right is even far more basic than that, and that's just getting the machine set up on the actual tractor. Now I have the spreader here. I might move over closer to it. I'll just bring the camera closer to it so you can see a little bit clearer. And we'll just look at maybe the spreader on the tractor. So we have the tractor.
Just for example, now just at home today, there's a guy coming to spread a bit of 10-10-20 for reseeding. And he's going to do a bit of nitrogen, I would say protected urea and grass ground in after that. So what you're saying there is basically he'll have to adjust his setting between.
He will, and I'll show you those settings as we move on, you know. But basically, you know, the basic machine settings will be more or less the same. Where the changes are going to come is actually down here with the vanes. You know, the adjustments with the vanes. There may be some adjustments in the height as well. You know, in order to achieve that. Now it'll depend on the working width that he's working to. You know, so you know those variables. And look, I suppose I'll show you when we get into the actual setup and calibration. And I have some books and stuff there that will come with the machines. But look, the reality is there's apps and stuff there now which make that far more easier because those books were very off-putting for people, like, you know, because I suppose number one, that they were hard to understand and read, and number two, it was almost impossible to find your product in it, you know. So the apps have made that much easier, you know. But if we just go back to the basics, first of all, I suppose, you know, we need to make sure that the machine itself is set up properly. Look, the first thing I just want to mention before we do anything with machinery is just safety. You know, unfortunately, again, I just see results out there. I saw them there this morning. The Health and Safety Authority announced results of workplace accidents, and the number one item is obviously is tractors again, you know, and machinery. So again, just, you know, anything we're doing with machinery, we just need to make sure that we're thinking of safety, you know, to make sure the tractor itself is fit for purpose and the machine is fit for purpose. So look, there's plenty of information on walk around checks on the machine, but I would encourage people to do them. And I suppose one of the problems with this is we get so used to our own machine and working on our own machines that we may become a little bit complacent, like, you know. So, Joe, I just want to mention that before we start. But I suppose putting the machine on the tractor, it is important that it's on correctly. I suppose one of the first things that we would be checking, I suppose even just to start with, is just make sure your two tires, that the tire pressure in both tires is actually the same. So that will make sure the tractor itself is sitting level, you know. Then we'll actually put the machine onto the tractor. You need to adjust the link arms on both sides, so your bottom link arms, to make sure that they're level. So again, I suppose, look, you know, just from giving these talks and that, you'll be driving along the road, you're constantly looking at machines just going along the road, and look, you will see them where they're, you know, maybe lying, you know, this way or lying that way, you know. And like, you know, you can imagine, like, you were trying to throw that fertilizer, you know, out maybe 15, 20, you know, up to, you know, 30 meters, maybe in some cases, people know, like, if you're off any little bit at all, you know, you're going to be, that fertilizer is going to be hitting the ground much quicker than it should be if it's lying any little bit at all. So make sure that it's level across the back, you know, okay. And again, you know, that'll come from adjustments on the arms of the tractor inside. The other area that we should be checking is, and again, look, this is, I suppose, there's a little bit of a caveat to it, is just that it's level front to back. So from, if we're looking at it here from the side, so looking at it in here from the side, that it's level in this direction. Now there is certain situations where that shouldn't be level, but by and large, what I would be saying to people, if in doubt, you make sure that that's level front to back as well. Okay, I will show you in the settings where that may change for different types of fertilizer. But getting those two things set up, first of all, is I suppose one of the first things. Check the machine over, then just make sure that everything is functioning correctly on it. So make sure there's no cracks or damage in the actual machine. The linkages inside in the front that are working, the regulator down in the bottom of the machine, make sure that they're okay, that if there's any wear or anything in those pins, you know, either left or right, that's going to change how much of an opening you get inside in it. So, you know, although the metering mechanism may be doing a full stroke, with wearing linkages back along, you're actually opening in the bottom of the machine may not be opening up to the full length because of that slap or play in those linkages. Coming down along then, just looking at the gearbox and the vanes themselves. So again, just give the discs a shake, just make sure that they're solid, they're not loose, okay. Let's follow the play in that one, okay. And then a little bit of play, just checking the play between the discs, just to see is there any slap inside in the gearbox. Again, it'll just give us an idea of any sign of any wears inside in that. So, Joe, any little bit of a play or a wobble in these, you know, will obviously, you know, maybe be exaggerated at speed, you know, it's a bit like balancing the wheels in your car, you know. You get that wobble at certain speeds, again, which will obviously have an effect on the overall performance of the actual machine. The big item then that we're looking at is our vanes, okay? So, like, the vanes down here are the thing that's doing all the work, okay? So, you know, they'll vary in the types of vanes. So you can see the vane mechanism here. This actual one, it can actually adjust in two directions. It can adjust on the angle and it can adjust on the length, okay? And the settings for those on the Amazon spreader over there, there's actually just adjustments on the actual angle of them. I'll pick it up here for a second. So it's this unit here, so we can adjust the angle. Now you'll notice that one of the vanes here is long, one of them is short on that. And again, look, they all work, they all perform, they're all well capable of doing their job. There's a lot of science and engineering that goes into this, a lot of testing. All these companies have their own purpose-built test halls where they take in the samples of fertilizer, they put them through the machines, they check to make sure that they can actually deliver the machines, and then from that, then they can actually give us back the required settings in order to spread that correctly. Okay, but although the designs are different, they will all are capable of delivering the same quality of spread. So checking those over, I'll just get a couple of vanes here for a second. I'll bring it back over to you there, and I just have some examples here of different vanes. So I suppose, look, starting, this is actually off the spreader here in the college. I'll come in here a bit closer and hopefully you'll be able to see that. You can probably see him there. But up along here, there's a whole series of ripples up along that vane, okay, all the way up along. Now you can imagine, like, the fertilizer is landing, hopefully, you know, in most cases they're trying to land it right here in the center where the disc is at kind of at its lowest speed. By doing that, it gets I suppose a soft start is what they call it. So it's gentle on it. It lands onto this gently, so it's not getting a slap of a vane as it comes around. And then it travels out along the vane, okay, gaining energy the further out that it goes. And then it leaves here at the end. So, you know, by the time it's reached the end here, it's after picking up all the energy to get thrown that distance, okay. If there's damage or ripples or that on this, you know, that's going to cause friction or wear, you know, against the fertilizer. So the fertilizer is actually going to slow down and as it moves out, rather than pick up that full energy that it would when it's moving along a nice smooth surface. So that's going to have an effect on it. I suppose,
are there ripples on that one there, Francis?
There is ripples on it. Can you see?
So
you
that one's
see
damaged,
him,
like. Yeah, you can actually see him, all right. Yeah, so that's actually damaged, then, is it?
It is, yeah. Hold on, I'm after the. It is. You can see that? You can, yeah.
Yeah, we can see it on the main camera there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's kind of ripples all the way up along here. Okay.
Yeah. And obviously, then if you were seeing a lot of dust, we'll say, as you're spreading, is it a risk that the drop speed onto the vane has gone wrong and that it's fracturing the granule? Then, is it?
I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, it might have actually more to do with the fertilizer. Now, it could be the drop point, on the machine, but it might actually have more to do with fertilizer. And I look at doing a test on fertilizer. I have a kit there for testing the fertilizer hardness and that, which might explain that a little bit clearer. Here's another one here. So again, this is I think off an Amazon spreader as well. So hopefully you can see all the ripples up along there, and you can see the big hole here at the top of it. Okay, so there's a large hole there in the top of it, and again that's worn completely through. There at that point. This disc here, or this vein here, this is off a Bogwell Spreader. Okay, but you can see, you can probably see the texture change between here and here.
Yes.
The whole vein would have been this texture up here. You can see it's actually got very, very rough down this area. So again, the friction as it moves out along there is going to be way higher on this area than it would have been on the original one. And this down here, this is not a slot for a bolt. That's wear through the vein as well. So you can see the hole that it's cut through all the way through there at that point. So the other one I have here now is this is off of Bogwell Spreader. But again, now you can see all that surface again, again the roughness on it, and again you can see the hole worn through here at this point again. So it doesn't matter which manufacturer, like these are wearing parts, and they need to be checked and they need to be replaced. I actually gave a talk a couple of years ago, and it was out of a discussion group, and the farmer said he didn't want to use his own spreader because he didn't want it put up in front of the group. He didn't think it was suitable, and they organised to get the local contractor spreader to come in for the session. But it was actually a spreader similar to this, and here on the machine there's actually I don't know if you can see there now, but there's actually a tab here on the back where you can catch your finger to extend these in and out. But actually there was a hole, there was an inch missing off the end of the vein, completely gone, but the tab was actually still attached because of the way the metal had worn. So literally fertilizer was leaving, it was coming out, and it was hitting straight into that tab, on the back of the machine. So an area that I would recommend everybody, that's watching this, to go and have a look at the veins on the machine and check them out, and make sure that they're not worn or damaged.
Are there any guidelines then, Francis, in relation to how long you'd expect them to last, or is it complete variation?
It really depends on the fertilizer, to be honest. Because some of them have a kind of maybe a filler material and a kind of a stone. Some of them are an awful lot more abrasive than others, So, and again, look, one thing with fertilizer spreaders, aftercare is critical. So once you're finished spreading, it's the washing down afterwards. If it's well looked after, washed down, gets a spray of oil, you can get way longer out of the whole machine, not alone just the veins. So again, just basic maintenance will have a huge influence on it, but again, look, the types of fertilizer will also have an effect and an influence on it.
Not a great idea to be leaving fertilizer in the spreader, so.
Definitely not. No, definitely not. Of all things, I'll just come around to the side here just for a second. We'll just have a look at the mechanism here on the side. This unit here, this is our headland control on this machine. Okay, so on this machine, what we do is it's on, we'll say, on the left hand side of our machine. So we have our driving on the ditch to our left hand side. This is hydraulically lowered from the cab. So you literally operate the spool valve above. This unit will come all the way down and it will sit here in the spread pattern. And what it does, now there is different settings or adjustments on these as well. There's normally kind of 3 adjustments or 3 basic settings, but it'll vary from machine to machine. One is, I suppose, what's called full eco mode. So basically, now look, each company will have their own name on it, but basically what it's doing is it's making sure no fertilizer goes beyond the boundary. So absolutely no fertilizer will get beyond the boundary. Now we'll say that first run, depending on what you're working with, is, let's say if you're working to 12 meter bout widths, you're going to be 6 meters from the headland. Most cases our fertilizer spreader is actually spreading 12 meters both sides. It's almost touching back to our next run. But what we're doing here at this point is we're actually taking all that extra fertilizer that would normally go beyond the boundary, turning it back into that area, and then it obviously evens out the spread pattern in that area. There is, I suppose, there's kind of a middle setting then, and then there's a third setting, which is, I suppose, field or crop setting adjustment for this. And in the field or crop setting is it makes sure that it spreads fertilizer right up to the ditch. Now, some of it will go beyond the ditch in that case, so there is some adjustments to that. I suppose just making sure that it's fully lowered and fully raised as well is very important. And even, look, we might touch on some of the high-end technology that's available on spreaders before we finish. But again, even on those high-end GPS spreaders, a lot of those use the same type of mechanism, for the headland controls. So you would lower it down for your headland and raise it back up. And like, it is something that I know even talking to people who bought the high-end spreaders, saying, I was mentioned the fact that there is, some of them now actually have a sensor available where there's actually a switch, a little sensor switch that picks up the position of this, and it'd like the light inside the cab. And to be honest, I'd be nearly recommending people to go with that option if it was available, because, I have, as they talking to people, that they've ended up continuing to spread. They might be on the phone or something after doing the headland run and continue to spread the rest of the field with the headland unit down. And again, that's going to have a huge effect on, obviously, the quality of the spread. You'll have an awful lot of striping going on in the field, because you'll normally be doing a run up here and a run down the next one, so it will definitely cause issues. So again, that switch, fantastic tool, works great. Just needs to be used properly, and again, just that it is a maintenance item on it. The same as on the Amazon spreader there. On the Bogwell spreader here, it's slightly different in the way it does its headland mechanism. So with the I suppose Bogwell is slightly different actually in a number of ways. The other two machines have outward spinning discs. So the discs actually spin outward. So this disc is actually spinning this direction, throwing fertilizer out in that direction, and this one is doing the same in this direction. So by and large, would say the left-hand side of the machine does the left-hand side, and the right-hand side does the right-hand side. Whereas the Bogwell, and there's one or two others on the market that do the same. Reedall would be one of them. There's I think Tulip, there's one or two others anyway that have similar, but they're actually spinning in the direction, inward direction, so they're spinning this way. So actually both sets of discs actually cover almost the full working width of the machine. And what they've done then for their headland mechanism is they actually have, there's a lever here. If you pull this lever here, what it actually does is it changes the direction of the discs. So the discs actually spin in the opposite direction for the headland run, okay? What's actually going on there, if we have a look at the vein here, okay, basically the fertilizer is coming down, it's traveling down the full length of the vein here and leaving the vein then at that point when we're doing our normal spreading. When we're doing our headland spread, it's actually spinning in the opposite direction. We have this first kind of a wave which actually diverts the fertilizer. The second bit of fertilizer will travel along here, and it will actually leave here. So it actually doesn't travel as far down the vein at all. So it doesn't build up the same amount of energy. Okay, and that's how they achieve. There's also an angle up there as well, just to kind of to change the trajectory of it in order to achieve that. But again, I suppose it's just important to understand that each machine is different, and that when you're checking over your machine, that you're checking to make sure everything is working on it that should be working, or that should be on your machine. Now there is other ways to adjust if you don't have that headland unit on, with the likes of the Roush, I think on the Amazon as well. You can actually adjust the vanes. You can get down and physically move the vanes for your headland run, and the settings there in the book or on the app to give you those settings. So you can actually physically do that as well. So there is other mechanisms to do it. But look, the reality is, I'd be recommending people go with something that can be controlled from the cab, so that you can physically operate it. Now look, I would say on the Roush machine, you can lower and raise that with the machine running. There's a hydraulic spool, so when you're on the headland going into the field, you could be pulling that down to get ready to get going into the field. On the Bogwell, you can get a cable control back up into the cab. So you have a cable control to open or close this. And again, the easier you make that for yourself, the more likely you're going to do it. You know, if you have to, you know, the one thing you do on the Bogwell machine, the machine has to be stopped, and the discs have to be stopped, because you're actually changing from forward to reverse in the gearbox. You know, so it is very important that your discs have fully stopped before you change over, so you don't have that issue with the other machines. Okay, but I suppose just checking those over is an important feature. The other thing then, I suppose, if we is just making sure that your metering mechanism, so that'll vary from machine to machine. We can see it probably here on the back of the machine here. So we've our metering mechanism here on the back. So again, we're just loosening this, we're sliding this across to match up with whatever our settings give us from, we'll look at the apps and stuff later on where we'll get those settings. Again, we'd be, you know, in this case, we'd be adjusting both sides to get our settings right. So that's obviously changing our shutter position inside the machine. Now look, that will vary as well from fertilizer to fertilizer. So I might even do one. I'll do one there now altogether, just to show it to you. So one second now. I'll share the screen here on the phone. Let me just take you through how we'd actually go about maybe getting the settings. So hopefully you can see that now, can you? Is that popping up there? It is. Can you hear me? Am I gone? No. Can you hear me? Yes, no? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, will you? Yeah, right, I'll stay talking. I can't hear you for some reason. Okay. So, look, basically, we have our Amazon spreader here. So again, look, the first thing here on the app is we're looking for the make and model. In our case, we have a ZAM, okay? So we've a ZAM here, okay? There's OM and OS, okay? That's actually the disc, okay? And I'll show you that in a second again, okay? So we actually have an OM disc on the machine here, okay? So we could change those. So we'll go with our OM disc. The second item there that we're selecting is our country, okay? The reason we're selecting our country is so that we're just downloading the fertilizers for Ireland, okay? So obviously, you know, they've tested fertilizers. You know, these machines go all over the world, spreading, you know, the fertilizer wherever. So they need to have settings for each one. The next thing then that we're doing is just going to pick our fertilizers. So if we come in here, you can see the range of fertilizers. So we just take a look at an NPK fertilizer there for a minute, okay? And I'll just come down there and we might even just take an 18612 there, okay? And we'll just look at, you know, you have the material blends, okay? There, so you can see a picture of it. If I click ready, okay. The next thing then we're going to do is we're going to put in our working width. So let's say we're working at 15 meters. We're going to travel. We can change our travel speed. So we'll go to 12, and then, you know, what we want to put out per hectare. So let's say, you know, 120 kgs per hectare. Display our results. The first thing I'm getting is, you see up in the very top, it's saying that there's the settings are based on a 5 kg test sample, okay? Now, this warning is there because the test sample that they've actually used, you know, when they run these machines in their test hall, you know, they would actually need, you know, I think there's close to 4 ton to actually carry out a full test in the test hall of fertilizer. That means, you know, Goulding's sending 4 ton of this 18612 in this case would be over to Germany, to Amazon's test hall in Germany, you know, or to Rausch's factory, or to Bogwell's factory up in Denmark, you know, and then they run that through their fertilizer, or through that their test hall to get the results. In this case, it's based on what's called a 5 kg sample. What they've actually sent them is actually, they only sent them 5 kgs. They've taken those 5 kgs and they've matched the properties to another sample of fertilizer that they have put through their machine, and they take their settings from that. But they are given a warning to say that it's only based on the 5 kgs. There's calibration factor 0.92, a granule diameter 3.72, a bulk density 1.03. Okay, we'll have a look at those in a minute when we have a little do our sieve test and stuff over there in a minute. And then it's given me a vein setting of 20 and 42. So I'll show you in a second where we'd adjust those vein settings. So we're 20 and 42, and it's given me shutter position then of 25 for the 120 kgs per hectare. So that's the regulator settings on the back of the machine. Then there's other settings further down for different types of hydro machines, and also the limiter for headland settings there as well. Okay, so you can see side spreading, boundary spreading, watercourse spreading, as we mentioned earlier on, just a different name for the same items. So that's an 18612 from Goulding's. Vein settings 2042. We'll just have a look at, we'll do another one there for a second. So we'll just try a target 10.825. Okay, blend ready. Okay. 15 meters, 12 and 120, and we'll display the results. Okay. You can see, again, it's given us that warning here on top. The calibration factor, the 0.9, it's 3.6 mils there and 1.01 kgs. 1941, okay. So again, our vein settings have even changed, slightly for those. And I've done this in the past for two 10-10-20s. One from one manufacturer and one from another manufacturer, and the vein settings have changed. And what's changing is okay, I'll just come out of this now for a second. So what's changing, what's normally changing is that bulk density. Okay, the bulk density of the fertilizer is different, and it's giving us different vein settings. So that's our OM disc there that I was talking about, and in this case, Joe was giving us 18, so I'll be adjusting up to the number, that's 18 is on this side, okay. Just him across to the 18 there, okay, so changing the angle there, and then I'll be adjusting this guy to 41, I think we were saying. So back there to 41, okay. So by changing those angles, and we noticed that I think 41 had gone to 42, Joe, between those two fertilizers. So again, that's changing the length of this long vein, okay. So basically, what it's going to mean is the fertilizer is actually going to spend slightly longer on the vein. It's going to gain more energy, Joe, before it leaves the vein, and that'll make up for that loss in density. I'm going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and I'll put in the other earphone just to see if I can get down back. Now, can you hear me now? You can you? You might give me a thumbs up again. No, I can't hear you. Can you give me a thumbs up again there if you can hear me now? Yeah. Look, I'll say go on anyway. I can't hear you for some reason. So I'll just stay going. What I'll do is we'll just have a look here at what I have here is I just have a kit for looking at or for testing the fertilizer. So basically, I suppose there's a number of different items. One is our bulk density, and the other is our grain size, and the third item would be our hardness. Okay, so to do the bulk density, basically what we have here is it's a graduated cylinder. It's just been cut off exactly at the litre mark on top. So we just fill it up to level. Okay. without there isn't too much of it. I'll just turn this guy on here. So we basically be weighing that a litre of fertilizer. So I'm getting 1.43 there, and this is Grand Lime. Okay, the cylinder itself weighs 0.2 of a kg, so that's 1.2 kgs in a litre. Okay. So that's, you know, the one we were looking at a minute ago was kind of around 1 kg. So, you know, this would actually, you know, this fertilizer here would actually have more energy than the 18612 and that we were looking at a minute ago. So the reality is the veins on this would probably be actually that little bit of a steeper angle, you know, so it would actually slide off of it that little bit quicker. You know, okay. If you go then to the likes of the urea, you're going to be at the other scale. You know, we're going to be at somewhere maybe 0.8, you know, of a kg, you know, for the litre, so it's going to be much lighter. It's going to need that extra energy, you know, so we're going to need to adjust the veins in order to give it that extra energy. The other item then that we'll be looking at is actually the granule size. So this item here, basically what we have inside it is just a series of sieves, different sized sieves inside here. Okay. Basically what we'll do is we'll actually fill one side of this. So just fill that up to level there. Put the lid on it there, and we literally just shake that for 30 seconds. And then after 30 seconds, we'd be looking at the distribution here inside that. Now you can see in this one, you know, again with the Grand Lime, we're actually, you know, they're quite big grains. You know, we'd normally see, you know, with the likes of your canned fertilizer, that most of the fertilizer would actually probably be here between the 3.3 and the 4.75. And I think, you know, those fertilizers we're looking at a minute ago, they were talking about maybe 3.45 or 3.5 or something around there. We have hardly anything less than 2 mil, and we have we've nothing less than 2 mil, but we have a small bit between 2 and 3.3 mil there. So again, our distribution, you know, varies. So again, that'll have an effect on the way the fertilizer flies from the machine. So again, now look, some of the manufacturers would say Bogwell actually, and I think Verland and a few others actually give you a kit like this with the machine, and you actually you can carry out these tests yourself on the fertilizer that you're using, and then you'd adjust using their app. You put the results from this into their app. Sulky is the same. They give you the kit as well, and you can actually put these results of your fertilizer into it to see how they compare. The other item then that we're looking at is just the hardness. Here we have a hardness tester, so it's this unit here. So basically, you know, there's basically a spring inside in this. The more I push down on it, basically that's, you know, 4 kgs, 5 kgs of force down along. So basically what we're doing is we're putting one grain underneath this guy here, pushing down until it breaks. Okay, so that's breaking there, you know, somewhere around 5.5 kgs. Okay, we do that then with a few grains, 5. That one has gone at 2. Okay. That one has gone at 4. Okay. So basically, you know, you'd by doing this, basically what we're doing is we're just checking the hardness of the fertilizer, and he mentioned earlier on about dust and that on the back of the machine. I suppose, Joe, that would be a big issue, Joe, of where we'd be where that dust would be forming, Joe. It's literally that fertilizer as it comes down. If we have a loss of soft fertilizer, you know, depending on where it's been stored, if you have bulk fertilizer that's been left in storage, you know, for a couple of weeks, maybe in damp weather, it'll soak up that moisture again. Then you go and spread that fertilizer. You know, when it's falling down and that vein is coming around and it makes contact with it, it'll literally just shatter there on the back of the machine. You'll end up the back of the machine will be destroyed in fertilizer dust. And obviously, you know, that's not, you know, fertilizer that we can actually spread evenly or accurately, you know, if we can't even get it onto the disc without making bits of it, you know. So again, we'd say ideally we'd be looking for a hardness there of certainly above 4, but certainly, you know, in around the 5 would be good. Now those bags, they're bags of granule that are there with 12 months, you know. So, you know, if we had fresh fertilizer, we'd probably see that they'd be actually up maybe even closer to 7 or 8, you know, of a hardness. But again, we'd say that bulk density, that granule size, you know, and the hardness, you know, are going to have a big influence on how that fertilizer spreads. And I suppose, you know, we just need to realize that fertilizer is not fertilizer, you know, that there is so many different types of products out there, and you just can't just dump a bag into the machine and expect it to deliver the results. Use the app. All the manufacturers have apps to set up the machine to give you those vein settings. Now they do, I suppose, they do supply you with these booklets as well. Okay, I suppose, you know, the likes of this one would be might be more typical, but like in fairness, like it's pages upon pages of numbers. You would want a lesson on how to use it in the first instance. Now I can give it to you now, but reality is I don't know if any will ever open it again. Most of them you'll be found either maybe behind the back seat of the tractor, or maybe they didn't even make it into the tractor. Okay. There is with the route, the other system that they actually use is this system, which is basically a card system. So basically they have these cards here, and you basically go, if you have an NPK, you'll find the type of fertilizer that you're spreading. So let's say we're talking about an NPK. You go then and you match these to your sample of fertilizer. So, you know, you take them, you put them down, you know, in beside your fertilizer. So you're going to get a fertilizer that is similar in size and shape to these. There's a number then. So let's say, you know, you say you're spreading an NPK 5. Okay, so that's the closest match to the fertilizer that I'm spreading. Then you go to the likes of the book here, okay, and you can find your NPK 5. So that's our NPK 4, NPK 5. So you're only looking for that page in the booklet, and then you get your working with. It'll give you your vein settings, okay. In this case, it's saying 16 meters D3A2. We'll go over to the machine just for a second, just to see what that might mean, okay. So here on the machine, basically, on these, we actually have two settings. There's an ABCD coming out along along this area here, and then there's numbers here. So we set this to D, okay, and we set this to 3, okay, is how we'd be adjusting that. And then the opposite vein, it's saying is A2. So on the opposite side, we'd be setting A2 here on this side, okay. The other thing it's giving me here is giving me this, you can see 40, 40, 50, 50, 60, 60, 60, 60, 70, 70, okay, out along here. What that actually is our working height, okay. Now, I didn't mention it earlier on, but basically, it's given us a setting for our working height, okay. So the 60-60 is actually the measurement from the top of the crop up to the tab here. I'm at 80 there at that point, okay, and you'll be measuring here at this point here again, okay, 76, okay. So we actually have a slight toe up on that. So it's telling us that you need both of those level. Now you would be measuring that over the crop, okay, rather than here in the yard. So again, making sure that we're high enough and at the right height. There is some settings there where you'll actually find that particularly if you're doing late cover crop, maybe in the cereal crops, you might find that that's actually 0 on the front and 30 on the back. So it's literally that front edge is just running along the top of the crop, and the back edge is 30 mil above the crop. So again, there is certain situations where you would adjust that. The Amazon spreader, that's always running level. They don't have any adjustments for toe. The Bogwell spreader over there, it does have an adjustment. It actually has a spirit level on the front of the machine that you'd adjust forwards or backwards. There's degrees of adjustment on it, and then you bring your bubble level back to level for that. The other thing that I just want to mention is just calibration of the machine. Okay, so the calibration of the machine, in order to, we have our settings now from our book or from our app or wherever we're after getting them. It is very important to check that the spreader is actually putting out the volume of fertilizer that we had anticipated or hoped. And in order to do that, with most of the machines, the method of doing it is we'll actually remove the vane. Okay, so there's a little tool here on the side of the machine here. We'll come in here, we'll actually open up. I'll just open off that there. I'm just checking because the volume is actually turned down. This is it. No, the volume is up. Yeah. So just remove this disc here completely. Okay. So we'll take the disc off the machine. This is going to end up dropping fertilizer straight down there. So actually here on the front of the machine, there's actually a little unit that comes with it. So this little unit here, that sits in there like that. Basically, we'll fit a bucket here underneath the machine, and then we'll start the machine, okay, and we'll actually run the machine. So the PTO needs to be running, okay, at our 540 RPM. We'll open the shutter then for 30 seconds. We'll collect the fertilizer that comes out of it. It'll be collected in the bucket there. We'll weigh what fertilizer has come out of it, and we'll check that then against, again, the apps and the booklets actually tell us how much fertilizer should be coming out of the machine. If your app or your fertilizer or your machine doesn't, I actually have a calculator online. I'll share it with Stuart to actually do the calculation for you to work out how much should be coming out of your machine. But basically, we collect that. If there's any error in that, so we've too little or too much fertilizer coming out of the machine, we'd adjust our shutter position again, okay, to change that. So why would it vary from what we'd be expecting? I suppose there's a number of reasons. One could be our fertilizer. If those granule sizes were bigger than what the company have tested, so maybe the fertilizer they tested was last year or the year before, granule size is slightly bigger, it would maybe flow out of it differently. If it was damp, if fertilizer was anyway damp at all, again, it won't flow at all at like the same rate out of it. It could be wear in the machine. So we mentioned those linkages earlier on. So those linkages, if there was wear in the linkages, maybe the shutter isn't opening fully, or maybe there's actually wear inside the shutter and there's actually, the hole is actually bigger than it should be. So these are all things that could affect that flow of fertilizer out of the machine. So it is important that we do a check on that. There is a case there with the Bogwell machine. So it's this bag here on the side of it that comes with it. So they use this for doing. I suppose they give you the sieve box to work out the size of granules and the hardness, and then they give you this kit as well, to work out the flow factor. So basically, this bar here hooks onto the side of the machine. There's a scales that comes with it. It hangs onto that, then the bag on that. You fill the bag up, okay? Turn on your scales, tear it, okay? And then basically what you do is you'll open this and you'll run it here for 30 seconds, okay? After 30 seconds, we'll close that and you'll have a minus figure here on your scales, and you put that figure then into, there's a formula here on the bag, okay? So your kgs per hectare is what you want to spread, your meters is you're working with, your kilometers per hour is your forward speed, multiplied by 155, which is just the formula just to bring it back, our kgs per hectare and that back, and then divided by gx, which is the grams that come out of the bag in 30 seconds, okay? That'll give you a figure somewhere in the thousands, okay? That figure then is just basically here on the front of the machine. So down here on the front of the machine, there's this guy here, this is our flow factor. So we'd have something in probably up around maybe 2000. So, 2100 is there. We'd adjust this guy back up to 2100 to our stop, okay? And that would be our adjustment for this machine. Now again, that doesn't take into consideration any wear on the machine. So it's still important to do the calibration test that we mentioned earlier on. The other thing I had mentioned on this machine already was that spirit level. You can see there's an adjustment. This guy here, I can adjust this guy to -2 degrees, 4 degrees. There's a bubble level. You can't see there now. This guy's in the way. But again, once the machine is up in its working position, we'd be adjusting that bubble level back to where it should be even. Look, the last thing, I'm just conscious of time. The last thing I want to do is just I just want to have a look at tray testing. Okay. So no matter which machine we're using, it's throwing the fertilizer. Once it leaves the back of the machine, it has no idea what's going on with it or where it's going to. And that's the same now even for the high-end GPS spreaders. Once it's left the back of the machine, it doesn't know what's happening. It can set everything up. It can weigh. But say if you take our GPS spreader, we were talking about doing our bucket test there a minute ago. Our GPS spreader has the scales on the machine. It's doing that bucket test essentially every maybe 10, 20 seconds. It's recalibrating the machine based on what's leaving it over the speed, the time period and the forward speed that you're doing. But again, once it leaves the machine, it doesn't know what condition the vanes are in or whether you've adjusted the vanes right or not. So it still doesn't know that it's landing correctly or that you have the machine set up level or anything like that. So that's why it's important to do a tray test. Okay, now I have two different types of tray tests. I suppose our common tray test would be, we'd say you can see the orange trays are here. Basically, we'd lay out a series of trays behind the machine. We'd lay one which is directly in the middle of the machine here, and then we'd lay them evenly across our working width, depending on how many trays we have. We basically run the machine over those trays, so we'd spread as normal. So we do a run up here, a run down, and spread that section as we normally would. We'd pick up the trays then, we take out these inner sections out of them, okay? We'll have the fertilizer collected inside in the tray, okay? So we've an amount of fertilizer collected in here. We'll put that then into, I'll show you the units we went over here. Put that into some type of graduated cylinder like this, okay? And then we'd look at that along with all the other ones, put them side by side to see our distribution, to see how we get an even distribution across the back of the machine. Again, to say certainly would be recommending, definitely, anybody spreading as a contractor should be doing this minimum once a season for each type of fertilizer that he's using, okay? There is kits available. They're about €200. There may be discussion groups for that. Bought a kit between them. Would do, and they could share it between them. But we would be recommending that you're checking to make sure the spread pattern is right. The other thing I have here on the floor is mats. They're actually mats from Amazon. Okay, So again, what I'll do is I'll just share my screen there again. So basically, with these are what's called it's the easy check. But basically, what we have is I'll put in here. So we're spreading rulings. And we continue with the easy tray. So but basically what I'm going to do is, you can see, you lay out your mats. So you have 4 directly behind the machine, you have 4 then out 3 meters, you have 4 out 6 meters, 4 out 9 meters. And basically what you do then is you literally click on the first one you're going to do. Okay, camera pops up on the phone, come down until the square boxes are lined up with the squares on the mat. Hit the camera button, it'll take a picture. So you can see the white dots represent the fertilizer on the mat. Okay, so if I go again, okay, so you can see the mat here with the fertilizer on it. Go down again, line up my dots, so you can see roughly where the fertilizer is on it now. Take the picture, and you can see where it's picking up fertilizer. Okay, it's counting how much fertilizer is there. Okay. Same again. And so on. Okay, so you continue on, okay, until you have all of them done. Okay, now with this one, what it will do is it's only designed for Amazon spreaders. Okay, so it will give you a set of results for Amazon. We'll wrap it up. Hopefully people got something from it, and we'll leave it there. And thanks a million, Stuart, for having me.